Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we're going to be talking about a topic that is so important, how to help our kids avoid addiction. And I know that I wanted this to be true, that we could teach our kids things or do things within our own homes that might have a tremendous impact to keeping our kids from becoming addicted or trying substances. And we have an expert, Dr. Kristen Gilliand, and she had earned her PhD at the University of Colorado in Boulder. She later served as an associate professor of chemistry at Cal Poly State University, teaching organic chemistry, neurochemistry, and the chemistry of drugs and poisons. She's going to talk to us today about her son, Anders, and how the experience raising Anders has impacted her feeling about substance use and self-harm. She's also the director of outreach and advocacy programs and is an assistant professor of research at the Warren Center. She developed presentations nationwide to youth, parents, law enforcement, legislators, preventative coalitions, and recovery programs. She's also developed a multi-award winning educational documentary aimed at youth titling Speak Through Me that was released August 2023. And she has appeared on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt and the news edition Elizabeth Vargas Reports regarding increased psychosis risks and the high potency cannabis use during adolescence. She is an amazing guest. All of that to say, she knows what she's talking about. She is here to impart her amazing wisdom on us. Dr. Gilliland, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Bryce. I appreciate you having me.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to your heart. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what has led you to this path of helping to keep teens from becoming addicted and the part that plays in mental health and just keeping people sober?
Absolutely. I have twin boys, and we lived in California. I now live in Tennessee, and I was an associate professor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, California. And I was teaching neurochemistry, the chemistry of drugs and poisons, and organic chemistry. So all those types of things that nobody wants to take those classes. Mm-hmm. But my sons during this time period, they had both experimented with marijuana. And I will say that because in California, it was legal medically, and then it became legal recreationally. And so my son, at the age of about 17 years old, that he started showing symptoms of psychosis. Mm. And then after he developed psychosis, we took him to a psychiatrist. His father and I took him to a psychiatrist, and it turned out he diagnosed him with schizophrenia at that time. And he had mentioned, he said, by any chance, he asked Anders, was my son, did you smoke marijuana? Did you use whatever? And he said, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm not saying that's what caused this. He said, but we're just starting to see an association between the cannabis or marijuana that's out there, because it's much more potent, mm-hmm. and cases of psychosis. And I had never heard of that, because I just, I grew up in the 70s, and it was literally like 1 to 2% THC, that psychoactive component that gives the high, mm-hmm. feeling that's in cannabis or weed. And so I started looking into it. And sure enough, yeah, if you look through the scientific literature, you can see that there's an association with it. Mm-hmm. Not saying that it causes it, but there's an association. It's kind of the perfect storm, maybe genetic predisposition, other things that can attribute to potentially suffering from psychotic episodes. Well, as it turned out, he was put on antipsychotics, didn't like the medication. hated the way it made him feel. He was very artistic and creative, and when he was on the meds, just didn't want to do anything anymore. So he stopped taking them and started using other recreational drugs to try and deal with the voices he was hearing and the hallucinations and delusions. And as it turned out, he became addicted to opioids and to stimulants. And when someone is in full-fledged addiction, it is so hard because you want to help that person with all your might. I mean, it's my son, like anything I can do to help you. And the person is just, they're not there. That person that you love is not there. Their brain has been hijacked by that substance or whatever they're taking. And he did not want my help. He didn't want to go into rehab. And so I actually went to study new treatments for schizophrenia because it was the only thing that I knew that I could try to do as a mother to help him. And so I went to Vanderbilt and started looking at new treatments, new novel and groundbreaking actually treatments for schizophrenia. And some of them are very similar to that are out there right now are similar to what I was working on that are fantastic. Well, when I left and when I went out there, he actually accidentally overdosed, and I lost my son. He was 22, and when I lost him, I knew that my life would never be the same, and that it's like it's like how it went dark. It went dark. My life went black. And then it was trying to figure out how to even get through each day. And so after it was about 2 years or so when I felt like I could actually think about maybe trying to do something and using my educational background and teaching and all of that, but then trying to figure out what can I do? And so I started to ask my son, I'm like, what can I do? What can I do to help? And he sent over, I truly believe this, that my son sent over a 13-year-old. It was during COVID. And she wanted to learn about her brain. And I started to teach her, and she could get it. And I thought, you know what? That's what it is. Both my sons went through the DARE program. And that did not work for them. That was kind of like dare me to do drugs. You know what I mean? So I wanted to come through something as like, maybe if we try to educate kids, maybe we try and teach kids about their developing brain. Maybe if we try to educate even parents about understanding the developing brain and why it is that kids will take those risks, why it is they might start using substances early, and why it is that they are much more anxious and will fall into peer pressure or cave in a lot easier. And so that's where I'm at now. And I have started, I've been working at Vanderbilt, their medical school, and been doing outreach to where I'm going to schools, I'm anywhere, any people who will listen, and teaching about the developing brain, the impact of stress and substance use, social media, all of that on the developing brain, but also just teaching them how beautiful their brain is and what they can do to form healthy connections, and just working on self-compassion and being mindful awareness, the importance of connection, real connection with people, eye to eye, and so it's been my journey now, and I can't help but think that my son Anders just totally set for me to go. And I just haven't looked back, and I started a nonprofit called 22 Forever. It's just in the works now, in honor of my son. And this is where we're going to try to build a middle school brain health curriculum. To start from, and honestly, middle school is even a little too late. I would love to start in like 4th grade, to start introducing the brain to kids when they're really young. But middle school is when they start talking about the brain. So it would be an easier transition to at least start there. So that's what I've been doing.
I love that. And I can't help but believe that your son has definitely helped you on this journey. It's something that I'm sure you couldn't have ever fathomed
No,
happening
no.
and being in this place. But it's one of those things that like we're taking this loss, this death, and making it into something to impact other people. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, nothing can ever make that better here on earth, but I think he is just right there with you. Like he is your partner in this.
Yeah, I totally know that he is. He is just the things that have come in front of me and I could never dream of, and that he's just, I know he's there and it's beautiful.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Okay. So I love this idea of teaching. I mean, I think we talk about like teaching, kids about their bodies. And I think, we're doing an okay job about that, right? I think we have some room for improvement in terms of like our physical, like development in terms of like puberty and our hormones and all those things. And obviously that goes into brain development too, because our brain dictates what happens in our body. And so, but I think that this is an important piece too, like understanding your brain, just information, right, is power. So knowing more can give us more power. So I'm so glad you're doing this. So let's talk about, okay, so parents would say to me, I know because, I see kids who have been addicted to substances or whose parents are worried about them becoming addicted to substances. And so then they're saying like, I don't want my kid to be addicted, but like there's probably nothing we can do. But do you think that there is a way that we can help raise kids that have a healthy relationship with substances?
Yes, I do believe that, and of course, when we think about a healthy relationship, I think about a person who is not dependent on a substance and that is not obviously addicted, where they literally, give up things in their life to get to that substance.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that so much of it depends on their genetics. So much depends on, did they have trauma? Do they have um, uh, just looking at their mental health in general? I will say, like, for parents, the one piece of advice, and I'm probably going to say this over and over again, is that your kids look to you when they're young, like, until about 11 years old. You are their hero,
Mm-hmm.
and they are learning everything that you do. They are watching you. They're seeing how you respond to good things that happen in your life, to bad things, to stress,
Mm-hmm.
and they're watching. And so really trying to, I hate to put the pressure on it, but be a good role model.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this looking back because I even think about when I was, when my kids were young, something good happened. It's like, oh, let's break out the champagne. Let's do this, and it's like that. They're watching that. That's what you do. When good things happen, you drink, this is what you do. Or your phone, like things like that, because we know now that the phone is so addictive and so addictive to kids. And it's having such an impact because their brains are so much more plastic than they are when we get older. And I think that is something too, that really limiting phone time and paying attention, being mindful of your own phone time.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, was really interesting. I was at this conference, and in New Mexico, somebody got up to talk about, we were talking about social media, but they said that they had a problem with adolescent binge drinking amongst high school girls. And so they did a focus group to ask these girls, like, what would you do differently? What would have helped you or not may have helped you to avoid doing, these binge drinking episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And two of them were, one, I wish that my parent would put their phone down and interact with me. And two was, I wish my parents didn't have to drink at a 2-year-old's birthday party. Like those things to me that hit heavy, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm guilty of some of that stuff, when my kids were young, and so many parents, it's like things I look back and think, oh, I wish I could have been a little more mindful of those types
Mm-hmm.
of things. and nobody's perfect, and parents are going, we're going to do things, and boy, there's a lot of things that I would change, but just helpful little pieces of advice that just listening
Mhm.
to your kids and paying attention. And I really say this with the phones are addictive, and you're priming the brain for addiction to other substances. So
Mhm.
I just being present and talking to your child as much as you can about substances, knowing as much as you can,
Yeah.
and teaching them by being a role model. What do you do to keep healthy? How do you support yourself when in times of stress and those types of things? What do you do? Do you go get help? Watching you do those things for yourself will teach them how to have a healthy relationship with stress.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because I'm thinking about the phone, especially because it's like everything we can do or need to do, it seems like is accessible on our phones, right? So it's like our shopping list, our like playing music, even like checking emails, like even if it's relative to your kids thing, or my kids play sports. And so checking the to make sure I have the calendar invite right for their sporting activity and which field is it on, and calling a friend. And I mean, it's just like all of these different things. And some of them I know are maybe more beneficial than others, right? And so but it's hard. Even I struggle with this part to figure out like, where is the line? Like, do I really need to, can I write my grocery list down on a piece of paper? Right? I can, like, and so then it's like, do I commit to that, or is it, it's just hard. And I found myself, there's an app I use that like when I come to my house with, like it knows with the GPS. And so then it will put my phone on silent,
That's great.
because sometimes I just like forget, and then it's like so easy. And I like, my husband laughs at me because I lose my phone around the house like all the time. And like the person with, like being like, have you seen my phone? I don't know where it is. But it's like, that's good because I probably don't need to be on it. But it's like, I don't know where I left it the last time. I was in the bedroom or in the entryway or on the laundry, on the washer. Where was it?
Right. Well, and I think in that way, it's kind of good to have a family meeting and everybody decide where, creating those boundaries of like, where's a good place to use our phone? Like where, and
Mhm.
maybe asking your kids, like, when would you like to see me off my phone?
Mhm.
Those types of things. And there's going to be sometimes you're gonna be like, no, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I need to have my phone here. And then also just trying to find just a happy medium where you can say, okay, I listened to what you're saying and I can implement this and this, but I can't do that because I'm your parent and I need to, keep you safe, whatever that might be, just
Sure.
something that
Yeah.
make sure that you both have, you get a happy medium and you're valuing what they're saying and you're listening to them.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot of places, but you know what? I will say that like writing down the list is it's healthy too for your brain, to do those things.
Yes. No, it totally is. And it's like, but we used to like, it's, the phone companies knew what they were doing and kind of hijacking our brain of like, how much pleasure can we give people out of this device so that then they keep going back and back and back to it. It's not in their best interest for us to disconnect, right? They want us to be connected to the phone, right? So that they can keep getting our views and, right, our
Yes.
attention.
Yes, and advertisements, all of that stuff. So they're
Yes.
just, yeah, it's money, it's the same with all the industries and the tobacco and cannabis, all of them. It's all an industry that is based on drawing you in, and I hate to say it, but they get money and
Yeah.
it's business, right? That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so we know that teens are likely to, I mean, not maybe every teen, but like thinking about lots of teens are likely to experiment with alcohol or drugs at some point. How can parents prepare for this reality without panicking? Like, I think, it's scary. Our oldest is 13, and that is, like, I know we're in this space. I think we're in, like, him personally, we're not there yet, but my radar is up, right? Like being observant of situations. But it's like, how can we navigate that? Like, I think, it's obviously against the law to provide minors substances that are illegal, but like, how do we navigate it? I don't know. It seems tricky for me.
It's very tricky, and you're absolutely right. And I think the one thing is really talking to your kids about your expectations, listening to them again, just coming up with a good, happy medium. Some things that understanding what's out there is so important. And I go to middle schools a lot, and there are some middle schools where they won't allow me to say like marijuana because they think like some of the parents will say, oh, I don't want, I'm not going to have my child in the assembly if they're going to say the drug names. And the one thing I hate to say is that, when I go through those schools, those kids already know. They already know. And they're friends. They're, especially if they, have smartphones, they're looking up all that stuff. They know. And so in reality, the best thing you can do to empower your kids is to have the conversations with them. They're going to hate it. They're going to roll their eyes. But when you do, don't do it as and I shouldn't say don't. I said some kids will be okay with you kind of being more strict and giving them the lecture. But most teenagers, I would say, would be more welcoming if you just asked questions and just continued. Always follow up with another question like, hey, have you ever heard, from your friends about, these vape pens, and say, have you heard that some of them have this stuff in it? And you just keep trying to arm yourself with that knowledge and keep asking those questions. And I always found with my kids, one of the best places was when they're in the car, because you kind of got them, captive audience there. But I think that is something about making sure you understand, look up, like there are emojis that kids use to get drugs on the internet. And so making sure that you're familiar with those emojis are so that you can see, because they're just very, two things, and that is to a drug dealer, and they know like that's what this person wants. And really when they're like, mom, dad, I know, just say, I'm doing this because I love you. It is dangerous out there and I want to keep you safe. And so two things I would recommend is, one, having your child, talking to them about the dangers of certain substances out there, and then telling them that, if they're going to go to a party or they're going to go hang out with friends, already have them come up with the excuse of why they're not going to do it and still look cool. Because it's so hard during this age to say, oh no, I'm not going to do that, and worry about what the repercussions are going to be from that. So having them think about all the different scenarios that they could be in. And then they're working on their prefrontal cortex, thinking of planning and decision making, all that kind of stuff. Another thing is to have a code of some kind, whether it's an emoji or something that your child can text you, and that means come get me. And so then you can call them and say, you got to come home now, whether it's late BS, so they can get out of that situation and still, again, look cool to their friends. And as much as I hate to say that, but it is such a huge part of the adolescent brain of just, that's how people perceive you as everything during that age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember something that I've told parents and teens that I see is like to just do an X, because then it's like, it could be just like accidental, right? Like it's like, oh, I didn't mean to text that, right? If somebody were to see it, but then they, whether they know or don't know what that might mean for you or just something, right? To be able to say like, I need to get out of here without having to say, I need to get out of here, because it might be a situation where you can't. And it's too risky to do that, or socially or physically. But yeah, peer acceptance is so important at this period of time. And it is hard. And I think, the thing that I talk to teens, and most of them don't really want to experiment with drugs. Like they're not saying like, oh yeah, I went to this because I really just wanted to try marijuana, or I really wanted to try, Xanax or whatever it was. They didn't go into it with that. It was more that they were kind of pressured by their peers to try something, or everybody else is doing it. So then it felt like, even though people didn't say anything, but you passed on something, and then it just felt, like they needed to do that. What do you think about, so there's a situation that happened for me. This was, I think, at the end of last school year. My daughter, who is going to be 9, what we were driving, and somebody was using a vape pen.
Mm-hmm.
And they were smoking, but she said, "What is that thing that is in that person's mouth? What are they doing there?" And I was like, "What? Where?" I was like, I didn't even see it, but like her eyes picked up on it. And I was like, "Oh, I think that," I was like, I didn't see it exactly, but I saw like the smoke that kind of came from it. So then that gave me that clue. I was like, I think it's called a vape pen, and this is what it is. And, she's like, "Why would people do that?" And I was like, well, chances are they thought, they wanted to try it, but here are the things that could happen, right? Like, I've had cancer before. And so my kids are very sensitive to that. And so I was like, it can cause cancer, and, it can become addictive where you can't stop doing it. And my daughter's like, that sounds really ridiculous. Why would you want to do that? I'm like, please keep that mentality. Right. But is that something that is good to like talk about the things when our kids are bringing questions to us?
Yes. If they're asking you a question, this is the perfect time. And you handled that beautifully. I mean, everything you said was great. And letting them know that. And because that's, if they're curious, that first sign is like, what is that? Do I want to try that? And so you handled that beautifully. And so I think all parents should have those open conversations. And that's why arming yourself with that knowledge behind it and understanding what it is. I mean, some of the vape pens that these kids are using, as I said, some of them are, between 50 to 95% THC that are in there. And these kids, they're at school and they're taking hits off their vape, and then they pass out in the classroom because it's so strong.
Yeah.
And those types of things are being able to understand. And that's exactly what you need to do, is have those conversations. Because when they're asking that, it's like, oh, thank you for asking, it's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. My kids are definitely curious about all things. Yes. So, I mean, and I think it was good because then everybody that was in the car also heard, right? Even though it was her question, it was like everybody else was exposed to the answer too, in a good way, right? To understand, even though they might not have asked it themselves, but then everybody kind of heard about that from her curiosity.
And one thing I want to follow up with, there is an organization, they're called One Brain, One Choice. It's a great organization. And I think all parents should look this up, because it shows the amount of kids, their whole lesson or message is saying that so many kids do not choose that, like they don't do drugs, that they choose not to do drugs. And so it's so important to show, because so many kids, like I have this game, Just the Facts, that I play with kids, and it's like this fun little like Family Feud almost type of thing. Ask them questions and they go up against each other. And one of the questions is, how many, for like 8th graders, how many 8th graders used marijuana within the last month? And you have these numbers, and they always choose like over 50%. They always like over 50%. And it turns out it's like 7%. Yeah. And so telling kids, like, look, you're actually in the majority when you don't use. You have this feeling that everybody does, but that's not true. Yeah. And so, and the great thing about the One Brain, One Choice, they have all of this data there, and they have actually a little thing for parents to print out to have those conversations. So I highly recommend. They're great people there that are doing.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, they love that. Okay. So what other protective factors can reduce the likelihood that kids would either use substances or become addicted?
So I think a lot of times mental health issues and anxiety, stress, things like that, those go hand in hand with usage. I mean, peer pressure, we could, like we said, talking about having that conversation where they can figure out ways to get out of it, and having them understand, like I said, not every child does drugs, the majority don't. But I think as far as protective factors, really being able to, I think you'll get this, is being able to accept and work through their emotions. And that's something that, as a society, we are all not great at. I always tell people, it's like your phone, I mean, myself included, when I'm in a line, what do you want to do when you're standing in a line? You know, you just want to pick up your phone.
Mhm.
And it's like, we can't be bored anymore, or we can't work through something that's upsetting.
Mhm.
And just so need to do that. And
Mhm.
so teaching kids to, to name, you got to name it to tame it, to
Mhm.
figure out what it is, how they feel. And so instead of trying to cover that up, and so many kids, like, they use marijuana for anxiety. They're like, I'm so
Mhm.
anxious and it's the only thing that helps me. But you can say, okay, maybe it helps you for that, couple of hours, but then once it wears off, how do you feel? Anxious. It's like, okay, well, you're just masking it. So let's
Mhm.
try and get to the bottom of that. So I would say protective factors, if you notice signs of, mental health issues, isolation, maybe grades falling, and this would even have to do with substance use. When kids start using, their grades start to go down, and they might isolate themselves,
Mhm.
um, and maybe really paying attention to how they're speaking to themselves
Mhm.
and understanding that, because that's a huge red flag when kids keep saying, I'm terrible, or I suck at everything, and all those kinds of
Mhm.
things. It's
Yes.
like, yeah. So, um, a couple of things I would recommend, and these are all things I'm saying because I didn't do these things. I mean, I did some of them, but I'm just looking back, like, as I said, just things I wish I would have done more.
Mhm.
My kids, we didn't have them do chores all the time, and kids, to give them a feeling of being, like, contributing to the betterment of the household, like, have them do chores, have them do hard things,
Mhm.
and and let them fail, and that's okay.
Mhm.
We just don't do that. We don't. I was guilty of bringing my kids when they forgot their homework. I was guilty of bringing it to the school. Oh, you forgot your homework. Anders was notorious for that. So I'd bring it to the classroom. It's like, you know what? Let them fail. They didn't bring it. They forgot. And it's so hard as a parent to do that. But I realized the things I did to, as a crutch, it was like consistently never letting him fail or never doing those things. And I really feel strongly, like, you have change a tire on your car, do it with your kid, your daughter, your son, like, teach them how to do those things.
Mhm.
And the sense of purpose and agency they'll get from that will help immensely. So I think helping with mental health, making sure if they need to go see somebody, that you find some help, someone that they can talk to. And I think, as maybe it's the first person they go to. They don't like, keep trying
Mhm.
other people. You got to find that fit.
Yes.
And yeah, do hard things. I would say smartphone. If they have a smartphone, I always want to have is Jonathan Haidt. Have you heard of him? He did the
Mhm.
Anxious Generation,
Yeah.
and he was saying no smartphones before 15. But he was saying bring flip phones back.
Mhm.
And so I would say those things, as far as just really trying to give your kids some chores, recognizing when they are in distress, listening to them. And when kids say, I'm fine, uh, where did I hear it? Feelings inside not expressed. That's what fine means.
Mhm.
So I think really telling them, it's okay. I'm here for you, and I want to listen. And when you think of silent, you can scramble those words, and it actually means listen. And so, just I'm now looking back, the question queen I would have been, just with everything, and I did. I don't want you to think I was actually very present and trying to get my kids involved in any sport, anything, because I was. That's what saved. I actually had a pretty rough upbringing, so it saved me. But you just, as your parent, you're figuring it out as you go.
Gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
You're just figuring it out, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna try something else.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I've never met in all the years, and myself included, I've never met a parent who wants to fail. I mean,
Yes.
like, and we're gonna mess up and we are gonna fail at times, and things aren't gonna go as planned. I think parents want to do best by their children, like they want to do well. And you, of course, did well. And your son was struggling with things that we didn't have the knowledge on how to do at that time. There's so much coming at us, right? And we just do the best we can. I
Right.
think parents giving themselves grace too is so important, because our kids are also listening to how we talk to ourselves, right? If we're like, oh, I look so fat in this, or right, like I am such an idiot, or whatever it is that you might say, that is going to become their language and their words. And I know I remember when my niece was little, my sister had said something like, oh, I feel so fat. Like she was just talking to herself. She didn't realize her daughter was in there. And then her daughter was like, do you think I'm fat? And she was
Mm.
like, why would you even think that? Like, and so then she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said this like one time in front of her. And then she picked that up. And so I think, not again to put pressure on parents, but it's here, right? Whether we like it or not, we have a responsibility to show up for our kids in the best way that we can. And part of that is learning more things and knowing how to do something better, repairing things that don't go well, and trying again.
Yes. And that's exactly right. And also just, when admitting that, hey, I didn't behave the way I should have behaved there, and I apologize. Sometimes, I got to just learn to take a couple breaths and step back and not answer just right away,
Mhm.
and modeling that so kids can see that behavior. And it's very easy. I mean, especially on the internet, you see people and the things they say, and it's just because they're not in front of that person, right?
Sure.
If
Yes.
you were actually face to face with them, would you really say those things? And we're just in this age where it must be so hard. I mean, for kids, and parents. My kids were just coming into when, I can't remember the social media that was the big one then. I can't remember even the name of it. It's gone now. But, I think it was Facebook was the first thing that kind of came
Mhm.
out. And so they didn't really grow up in that era of obviously TikTok and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and
now,
now it's even more, I feel like it's more enthralling. Like it just like pulls you in with the short reels and all the things. It's hard to break away, and they know exactly the method to keep your attention.
yep. And then it just drains your dopamine. I mean, which obviously gives you so much motivation, pursuit, reward, and they just know get your algorithm and just keep having those loops go and throwing them at you until by the time you get off. That's the thing. One thing I'll ask kids when I'm talking to them is like, I really want you to pay attention to how you feel when you get off scrolling from something. How do you feel inside?
Mhm.
Are you happy? Or do you feel depleted?
Mhm.
And I would, most kids, they kind of stop, you can see them kind of think about that. But
Mhm.
and,
Well, at first you feel happy, right? In the first
yes,
few
you're
seconds,
never
minutes.
there's coming because there are some great things. And that something is also, you can choose your feed. You have a choice. And so I always like, for mine, it's always a lot of positive stuff. It's a lot of animal stuff,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
lot of positive sayings, things like that.
Yeah.
And I look at, because my husband now, he's kind of like the news junkie, and he's
Mhm.
always angry. I'm like, well, maybe you should get off your
Yes, it makes me angry. I can't do news anymore. I mean,
yeah,
I try to stay somewhat aware, like, but I mean, it all is like sad and depressing and awful, and so it's so hard to do that and then go into life and feel like things are good. Like even if things at my home are great, then I
right,
look at the news and it's awful, and then it's like that ruins my day.
right. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about what you said about being bored. Like like when my kids say they're bored, I'm like, great. That's so exciting. Now you can find something else to do. And
Yeah.
they don't love that answer. But they know that I'm not gonna like fix it for them, because I'm like, you have to know how to be bored. I mean, how many times have I sat at a doctor's office? How many times have I had to wait at the DMV? How many times, right? Like just these things where it's like, even at the grocery store, at Costco or wherever, right? Like, and then to like pull out my phone, it's like I can sit here and people watch. Like I love people watching, but it's like sometimes you forget, like, and everybody's on their phones, right? Or it feels like everybody's on their phone, because none of us are very tolerant of boredom, of just like waiting. And then we expect our kids to wait for things. And it's like, well, if we can't do it, how do we expect them to wait, for dessert instead of sneaking it now because they just want it now?
That's exactly right. And that's the thing of just, the other bumper sticker, bring board back. That's something I want. Because
So
it's so
true.
important. It's so important, and I'm, happy that you let your kids sit there, and I actually will try, like I said, when I'm in a line, I'll count how many times I want to reach my phone and
Mm,
to check, email, whatever it might be, and sometimes I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and the funniest thing is I'll look at other when I do that, I'll make a point to look at someone else, and I'll say, "How's it going?" And they look at you like you're just a crazy person, right? Because you're like, "Why are you
you're actually
talking right
talking.
now?"
Yeah.
That's something we need to bring back again.
Yes. So, so
Connection,
true. Yes.
connection.
Connection and disconnection from all the technology and media stuff. Because it's
Agreed.
really not bringing us much joy. And then we're chasing the high, right? Like you'll never feel as good as you felt, which is kind of what happens with addiction too. It's like we get that feeling and then it's hard to get back. And then we're chasing that feeling.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think, okay, so how do I mean, we talked about having these conversations, bringing things up. Do you think is there any research or any suggestion around like being really strict or really lenient around substances that helps kids to do better in this time?
I think it depends on the child,
Mm-hmm.
and it depends on the, how the message is delivered. I do have a strong feeling that it definitely just boundaries. Kids need boundaries,
Yes.
and they need to know, um, why there are boundaries, and that's because you love them and you want to keep them safe, and this is my job. Uh, being to be a parent and not a friend is so important. When they get older, you can bring that in a little bit more, but when they are young, setting those boundaries, but having those conversations to where you not have it be a one-sided conversation where you're just spilling out and lecturing them about that. And like I said, just trying to ask those questions about, have they seen this, or do they know people who have had this, or telling them about that there are pills. It's so important that there are pills out there that look like, normal pills you might get from a pharmacy. And even if it's your best friend that has them, do not ever take them because you
Mhm.
don't know what's in them. And that it's going to be really hard for them when it's their best friend who, may have got them from somebody who knows who, but oh yeah, here I've got these pills.
Mhm.
And just having those conversations can be, life-saving.
Yeah. Well,
And
that makes me think about fentanyl, right?
nice.
And the overdoses that are happening and just I think it's really beneficial for parents to also talk to their kids about Narcan and even get Narcan for their kids, even if they think they would never take anything, their friends would never take anything, because my understanding from physicians is that you can't overdose on Narcan. If there is nothing there, you're going to be okay. That person is okay. But if they are overdosing from something that is an opioid, then the Narcan can basically be able to bring them back to breathing. You know,
Absolutely. And there
I mean, there might be some medical intervention that's needed in there, but that like it can allow their brain to breathe.
Absolutely. I mean, calling 911, administering Narcan and waiting, and if they don't come to in 5 minutes, giving them another,
Yes.
you have more doses of that. Definitely you want to do that. And there's a lot of places that you can go within your city to get free Narcan or naloxone. You can do that. And there are so many places. If you just type it in to find out, and even though you might never think that your child's going to use, you just have it in your house. I have it everywhere in my
Yes.
house,
Yeah.
and it will go bad if it's really hot in your car, but you can still, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's better just to have it in your purse,
Yeah.
something like that.
I carry it everywhere with me,
Yeah,
right? I just don't ever know when I might run into a situation that it would be needed. I mean, I thankfully have never had it happen at my office, but it's like, what if it did, right? Or, there's a kid and they just picked something up off the ground. It looked like a Skittle or, right? Like you just don't know. And I think that is a scary piece. So I guess I'm thinking, like, what do parents need to know about how the brain functions in this adolescent period that makes them more susceptible to trying things or more likely to take risks?
Well, they have in the brain. So in the kind of in your deep within your midbrain is the emotional center of your brain, and their prefrontal cortex, which is coming online, and so there's all kinds of structural happenings that are going on within the brain, just trying to basically have that prefrontal cortex come online.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the prefrontal cortex, just right behind your forehead, that is the volume control to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at kids, as far as emotions go, during adolescence, that emotional center of the brain develops faster than the prefrontal cortex. So it's ahead. And in fact, a little more sensitive, like the dopamine, which is in their reward circuitry, or you can call it the reinforcement circuitry when they do something. So if they were to have some type of risk taking event, maybe it's, racing a car down the street and they get away with it,
Mm-hmm.
the dopamine rush that they get from that. And then basically that emotional center of the brain is like, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
And it remembers it. It's like, I did this, got away, got lots of praise from my friends, everything. And so the brain is like, remember this, that was good. But the problem is like taking those risks, since the prefrontal cortex isn't completely online, they just don't have that volume control. And that emotional part of their brain is louder than the prefrontal cortex making the assessments. That's, because that's responsible for, your risk taking, judgment, impulse control, looking at all of these things, personality, attention. And when we look at all of those kind of executive functions during adolescence, a lot of those are pretty, they're working on them. I'm just going to say it that way. Kids are working on it, right? Personality, particularly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that not that kids need to know that there are consequences, like I said, when they do things, and you find out that they have done things, whatever it might be, that there does need to be consequences for them.
Mm-hmm.
And consequences that are loving consequences, right? They cross this line. But with as far as the prefrontal cortex, just trying to help them to make their own decisions, help them to plan things that you guys are doing as a family, help bring them in to really start to think ahead of things, and to actually help with, maybe you're going on a trip, say, hey, why don't you go online and go see if you can help us plan, like, and some of it you're gonna be like, okay, no, we're not staying at the Ritz-Carlton, but just, I know that's taking it to an extreme, but helping them, whether it's grocery shopping, whether it's cooking, whether it's all those types of things, all of those help to develop their prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
So that's what, just showing them healthy things, showing them how they speak to themselves, all of those are going to help balance that out and form healthy connections. And the brain doesn't know the difference between an unhealthy connection and a healthy connection. Mm-hmm. And so it really is important that, since our brains are so plastic, to know that that plasticity can work to their advantage or their disadvantage, basically whatever they're doing a lot of, the brain says, my human does this a lot, I'm going to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
That's drugs, or that's swimming or biking, or, doing art, whatever that is. The brain is like, what my human does a lot of, I'm going to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, like, talking to them about like questions about, like, let's say they're friends with somebody and you're like, oh, I'm just not really a fan of this person. Right. And it's like, what do you really like about them? How do they make you feel? What, what do you have to do anything to be accepted by them? Or like, what is that relationship like? And so sometimes it's not about us being like, oh, that doesn't sound good, but just pointing out like, oh, you didn't like that. And they did that again. Like, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that happened again. Right. Like where you're giving empathy, but you're kind of like telling them back something they didn't like, or like, sometimes it's like having a friend that has an issue and saying like, how would you solve that for them? Because sometimes it's the same thing they're going through, right? Like giving them the ability to work through those problems. And I think like cooking is a great problem solving skill because there's like measurement, there's just so much math that's going into it, which I love. But then also like it's about your preferences too. Like, what do you like? And so like making different decisions. This dish says broccoli, but you don't like broccoli. How about green beans? You love green beans. Like, is that something we could put in there? And so it helps them to like learn how to problem solve. Plus, it's a really great life skill. I can't like believe the amount of adults that I know that can't cook.
Right. It's such, and it brings them the fact that they can cook and then bring it to the table, and like the sense of just pride they're going to get from that, and self-esteem and all that stuff. So yeah, self-confidence that they did that. And I totally am on board with that.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking that my teens really like that I do is I call it like the Explo challenge. And so basically I have parents and the like teenager or the kid write positive messages about them, like things they really like about them on their mirror, or they do it with like sticky notes and putting them in different places. And that, I mean, even if your teen or kid is like, whatever, they love it. Like they are, even though they may give you like the rolling of the eyes and the sigh, right? They still like it to hear that you like them and that you feel positively about them and you love them, because sometimes they just don't know, right? Like they feel like, oh, I screwed this up, or like I'm not who my parents imagined me being, or I'm, not as smart as my sibling, or whatever it is that they're getting down on themselves. And it may not even be from you. They may just be naturally more hard on themselves, being perfectionistic. And so then you saying like, hey, I love you no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, you're amazing. I think you're so special. And like something that sticks with me that my mom said to me when I was having some trouble with friends is like, she was like, I would have loved to have you as a friend. Like, I can't imagine how lucky I would have been to have you as a best friend.
That's beautiful. I love that.
And I might have rolled my eyes at her and probably sighed, but I'm here at 41 saying that.
Yeah. Remember it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's something my mom said, but it was a different light, but saying, you're the only one who can make it a good day, so go do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, boy, that is the truth now when you look at that, right? It's all how your perspective on everything. It's whether you're going to have a good day. So mom's wise words.
Yes, I know. They're smart. We just don't give them enough credit. And then we turn about 25 and they're like, oh, shoot, you do actually know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about this, but what signs should we be looking for as parents to like say that our kids maybe like experimentation might have moved a little bit further, like we're kind of broaching addiction or something that just feels unhealthy?
Yeah, isolation, as I said, kind of hiding out in their room, getting a different set of friends. Like you just said, mentioning about that person, that all of a sudden this whole different set of friends, hiding their phone a lot. So not, letting you see their phone, keeping it in somewhere safe. I would also say that looking at personal hygiene sometimes, but definitely grades going down. That's a big one. So grades going down is a big one for understanding that. So I would just, when those things you start to notice, irritability, and that's kind of, I think with adolescents is how they show depression, is a lot of irritability and anger. And when you see that also comes, though, when you see it amplified, that could be a sign of kind of a withdrawal, basically a dopamine deficit that you have going on in the reward center. So looking for those signs, I think are important. But definitely the friend thing. If I would have really paid attention to Anders and all of a sudden he started hanging out with a bunch of different kids that I didn't really know. And that's when you start to question. And just like you said, what do you like about those people? What is it that they bring to you? What do they expect you to do?
Yeah. Which are hard. And sometimes our teens aren't going to want to answer those questions. So like, what do we do if they do say something, you're like, we notice that their friends are changing and we notice that they're really irritable. They're kind of reclusive in their room. What next?
I would come and talk to them and just tell them how much you love them and that you're really worried about them.
Mhm.
just try and have that heart to heart and say, I know I'm your mom or I'm your dad. And I really am worried about you. You haven't been talking, and do you need help? Do you need to talk to somebody? Maybe
Mhm.
it's not me. Obviously let's find somebody to help you get through, because I can feel you struggling. I know you. I know you well, and I
Mhm.
can see you're struggling, and I want to get you as much help as I can, because I'm your mother or your father, and I love you, and I don't want to see anything happen to you or for you to be hurt.
Yeah. Which is so hard. And I think parents are like, I'm afraid to bring that up. I'm afraid to like talk about it, because then once it's out, it's like you can't put it back. But it's like, if we don't have it out, if we're not looking at it, then we can't do anything about it. Right. So that part is going to take control.
That's right. And you just have to, as much as you can, just let them know that you're there for them, or you will find, is there a trusted adult that they can go talk to?
Mhm.
Somebody just need to talk to somebody, and someone who, they might not feel that their parent understands them at all. So that's the time to find somebody who they can talk to, and to not get upset about that, right? As a parent, and realize like you gotta let the professionals handle this,
Mhm.
and but just tell them how much you love them, and how you've noticed that things have changed, and just say, this just, and maybe, just giving them exact situations, like saying exactly, like, here and this time here, and I know your heart, and I know you, and it's just you seem like you're struggling,
Mhm.
and I'm
And it's
here.
quite a struggle, right? I mean, we all struggle at times, but
That's right.
it's just that, what are we using to cope with the struggle?
Right, and it's not suck it up, it's not those things, right? Never. And teaching them, yeah, life is uncomfortable and comfortable and sometimes just boring. And really, that the times when that are really hard are usually the lessons we look back on and we think, "Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for that. I really
Mhm.
learned a lot."
Mhm.
And, even with my son passing, what I've learned, and I had a gratitude journal that I kept before he died. And, I was really, I would, every single night, I was dedicated to it. And after he died, it was like, what am I grateful for? I didn't even know what to do. And, but 10 days after he passed, I forced myself to start writing in it. And I can't tell you how much that took me out of my darkness.
Yes.
Power of that was amazing. And it started out with just a cup of coffee. It started out with the sun is shining, just like things that I just, what can I find, during that time when you don't even want to go on.
Yes.
I knew I had another son, and I
Mhm.
have to go on, and I have to, he would never want me to be that person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, which is so hard and so brave that you did that. But the power of thankfulness, right? And the being able to find the good
mhm.
is so transformative.
There's so much good in this world, and the news focuses on all the negative. And just our communities and what we can do within that, just our community itself. I wish we could all just focus on that more, instead of the bigger, the bigger scope of things that everybody, you get on social media. You're like, okay, I'm not going on anymore.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So something you just said about community made me think of a thought. Like, okay, so what are your thoughts on, like, okay, let's say I have my 13-year-old. I
Mhm.
think he's a perfect example of this. Is like, okay, so we had, like, to my knowledge, no one in that group has tried substances yet, right? So what do you think about the idea of getting like parents and teens together to say, like, to have a pact with each other or to talk about drugs and alcohol? I mean, is that
Yes.
protected?
Yes, yes, and I think also, having them make a pledge, like, I choose, why do I choose to be drug free?
Mhm.
Why, that kind of thing, and having them all, sign a pledge and have it be fun, have it be
Yeah.
something where you're talking about it's not this serious, um,
Mhm.
and maybe letting them do something afterwards together that's really fun
Yeah.
too, so that it's kind of like, okay, you're gonna have this, whether it be 10, 15 minutes, because I think that's even too long for them to sit and listen.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think that just having that meeting, they will always remember that. They will always remember that, especially if all the neighbors get together and you guys do it together as a group and just say, you know, I've got, even if it's your other neighbor, to say, I've got your back, you know, to your children, all that stuff, like, we've all got your back. So if you need someone, you just come to any one of us and we're going to be there for you.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
so
I was just thinking about how impactful that would be, right? To have like, and then it's like, you know, you might have somebody who says like, I'm thinking about trying something, and then they can talk to each other about it, right? And then you have a whole room of kids and grownups who everybody is on the same page wanting to support each one of them.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Start that. Get on social media and tell
Okay.
people to start doing that.
Well, and I think it's young, right? The key is talking about it young because they're open to our ideas, right? They haven't yet developed their own thoughts about drugs and alcohol, and we're just modeling those things for them. So it's like, if we talk about it, but then we also have to be willing to model what it looks like to, you know, not use alcohol in different places, right? Because I think there's so many gateways to addiction, lots of them.
Right.
Lots and lots of them, it feels. And so, you know, if we're doing that, like, oh, I've had such a stressful day, I can't wait to have a drink. And, you know, even if you're just kind of like kidding, but it's like your kids are hearing that, or they say like, this is what success looks like.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They're modeling their behavior after that. Something happened at our home that I feel embarrassed to admit, but I'm going to admit it because that's part of what we're doing here. Is my 3-year-old, there was like over the summer, we had margaritas, and it was like, it just started with one, but then it was like, oh, that was fun. We had that. And then it's like, I'll have another margarita since we had leftovers. But then it was like, I made another jug of margaritas. And then it was like, my 3-year-old's like, I can't wait until I'm a grown up so I can drink margaritas. And I was like, oh shit, like that is so bad.
Oh,
right. But then it was like, okay, that was the perfect awareness to be like, okay, yeah, like this is too much, right? Like what we were doing, too much, right? And so we need to really think about like, why are we doing that, and what can we do differently? And like, is it because things are stressful? What other coping skills? And I try to talk to my kids about like, you know, when I feel really stressed, I go for a walk. Or when I feel really stressed, I like to go shoot baskets. Or when I feel really stressed, I like to find the colors of the rainbow in the place that I'm at, or whatever it is. And that, I hope, is modeling to them how to manage that emotion.
That's perfect. And yeah, I know. I've got a lot of those stories of like, oh, why did I?
Yes. Well, and I'm just glad the 3-year-old said something, right? Because then we can do something different. He's like, hey, I see the margaritas are great, and I would like some of those margaritas, right? So yes. Yeah. We always have an opportunity to shift our behavior, right? Make a different choice.
Always. And every day is a new day. So something, you know, and just resilience to watch, for your kids to watch you go through something and then get back up is your modeling, right? You're modeling.
Yes. So. Yes. Okay. So for parents who are thinking about like, oh my gosh, all of this is so overwhelming, right? I'm thinking about like all the things we just talked about things that we can do. What do you think is the most important things that people are implementing into their lives now?
So, you know, I would say 3 things that I think are pretty life-changing. And as I said, the first one, I'll always say listening and being a role model, a good role model on how you manage your emotions, those kinds, good, bad, happy, sad. But I also think that doing things, again, role model thing, volunteering, like doing things to go help serving something that is greater than you. And teaching kids that spirituality, whatever kind of spirituality you're into, but there's something larger than you. I can't tell you the number of kids that I had when I was a professor at the university who would come in that, you know, and they followed some type of religion, whatever it might be. But I was always amazed at how together and how positive and how, you know, of course they would have times that it was rough, but it was like, that's what it was. I felt it was just believing that there's something greater than you and realizing that there's someone that you can whether it's, Buddhism, whatever it might be, that you can, work on yourself. And there's someone who is listening, even though, I don't know, I don't even know how to phrase it, but just that I think is huge. I think talking to, a therapist, all of those things, but just trying to be prepared for the big questions that your kids may have, and thinking about those before they happen too. Like thinking about how, when your child gets to something, how are you going to have that conversation, and think about it before you meet with them. So I think like volunteering and finding something larger than you that you do with your kids that they can see, and I think not being having a household off phones for a certain time.
Yes, disconnecting, right? And reconnecting with the people in your home.
Yeah. And like at dinner time, having a meal and sitting down and playing highs and lows. Like, what was your high today? What was your low today? So kids can actually really think about what happened that was really good today, and what happened that was not so good. Mm-hmm. And so they get perspective on their life, right? And see that there are good things that happen and bad things. And every day, just everybody go around and kind of share so they can see that. Mm-hmm. But it really is connection. I think in the long term, that's what it is. Connection to each other, connection to your community, connection to, something spiritual, whatever that might be. I think all of those are however you do that, I think they're all positive, just positive forces in your life that are going to help to keep you healthy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. This has been such a great conversation. I so appreciate it.
I so appreciate it too. It was great getting to know you, Bryce, too. And I'm just grateful that you had me on.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Dr. Kristen, for also joining us. I know it takes a lot to share a story and to take tragedy and turn it into something profound that is impacting society and making a difference. Thank you so much for your time. With that, I will say, please take a moment, if you like what we're doing, to subscribe to our show, whatever platform you're listening on. If you would just go ahead and subscribe to our show, share this episode with anybody that you think could benefit. And frankly, I think this is an episode that everybody could benefit from, because anybody raising kids wants to protect their kids. So let's get this episode out there. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And also keep the emails coming, guys. I love the topic suggestions to our email at accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a lovely day.
Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.